Latino and Black voters will likely show up in larger numbers for Republicans today than they have in previous elections. According to the latest Wall Street Journal survey, 17% of Black voters responded they would vote Republican, up nearly 10 percentage points from the 2018 midterms. The same survey showed Democrats have lost a chunk of the Latino voting bloc. Since August, their lead with this base has gone from 11 points to 5.
The GOP has made significant inroads with Latino voters, a base that has traditionally voted for the Democrats. Now, this bloc is likely to make an impact in today's outcome, further proving that President Trump's reach with them has actually endured. So here to talk about how Black and Latino voters could make the red wave redder is staff writer for The Hill, Rafael Bernal, and also Abraham Enriquez, a founder and president of Bienvenido US. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
I'll start with you, Abraham. You are out in Texas right now, paying attention to a lot of the races in that part of the country. Obviously, there are Latino GOP candidates on the ballot, like Mayra Flores. What do you see as Republicans having done particularly well to connect with Latinos and get them to move toward the right?
Yeah, well, look, the New York Times just came out with a poll showing that Latino voters care about the economy, and the economic issue is more than twice as important than any other issue down ballot. And so when you have a 4-decade high inflation and you realize that the Inflation Reduction Act, which the White House seems to love to tout, did absolutely nothing for inflation, has actually hurt Hispanic workers and all Americans, really. It forces Hispanics who have always been this swing vote to kind of pause and to realize what they have to lose voting Republicans. And you look down ballot and some of the Hispanic candidates who are running on crushing inflation, on solving this issue and promoting economic opportunity, well, that's a very attractive message to Latino voters. And look, I agree with Representative Elisa from Michigan, who is a Democrat, who said the Democrat Party has not done a good job of showing their economic approach to Latino voters. And so when you don't really consistently talk to the Hispanic community, and more importantly, when you don't showcase that you're actually doing work for the table talk issues, then you start losing those voters. And I think that today we're going to see a little bit of that down ballot, of course.
Abraham, what is the Republican plan to address inflation?
Look, I think what's really important is to get government out of the way. During the pandemic, we saw that the Democrat governors were so restricted of their small businesses that it tanked their economy. You look at conservative states where governors allowed businesses to flourish, allowed businesses to go out there and reopen. You saw a significant gain in the economy. So I think what it really is just ensuring that the government doesn't go in there and restrict a lot of these small businesses. You look at Governor DeSantis out in Florida, the reason why he's gained so much Hispanic support around Florida voters is because he's running on that track record of being able to let businesses open and flourish. So I think that when Democrats come in and they talk about a government having to come in and help, that doesn't really, that sounds the alarm for Hispanics who come from countries where they know that big government overreach doesn't always equal freedom.
Rafael, is this trend as pronounced as we're making it out to be with Black and Latino voters? Because still, very significant numbers of Black voters in particular still obviously are expected to vote with Democrats. With Latinos, it's more mixed, but is the trend is real as we're making it out to be?
Well, I mean, that is what we're going to find out after tonight. That's
no, you have to tell us now.
That's the easy answer.
Tell us now.
But there are numbers that point in different directions. The number that I've been following for Latino voters is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials tracking poll. They did this for 9 weeks. And the final result, what stuck with me, in both House and Senate races, they're about 60-30. 60% of Latino voters are going to vote for a Democrat. Of course, there are changes like Florida. This is a completely different proportion because Florida Republicans are very good at doing their jobs and convincing voters to vote for them. But generally, the country, it's 60-30. That means that other 10%, the options are they might vote or not vote, and they might vote Republican or Democrat. Now, if it goes to 60-40, then Republicans have had a very good year with Latinos. If it goes to 70-30, then Democrats have had a very good year with Latinos. But my takeaway is not a lot has changed. There hasn't been a big transition But one point that Abraham was making that is really good is Democrats just did not show up. And we're going to see over the next week, I expect to be writing a lot of stories about fighting for leadership positions in Democratic campaign committees, especially the DCCC, looking at where were they? Why were they allowing Republicans to take the lead? Maybe not with Latino voters, but at least in the narrative of pursuing these voters, which is really important.
Well, I want to ask you about that and give you a chance to respond to something that Abraham said, because it is true that economy is the priority for Latino voters, followed by healthcare and education. Abraham's view of what Republicans are going to do seemed to largely center on a critique of how Democrats handled the COVID pandemic and a criticism of shutdowns lasting as long as they did. Prospectively, that doesn't tell me a lot about how to solve the crisis that people are in now. Do you think that Democrats have met the moment in explaining what their plan is to address the economy to Latino voters and more broadly?
I love your question. What are Republicans proposing to do about inflation? What are Republicans? What are Democrats? What is anybody proposing to do about inflation? We know that inflation is being taken care of by the Fed. And nobody's going to campaign on what they're doing because that's probably going to cause unemployment. So honestly, I think politicians that are running on inflation on either side of the aisle are, I wouldn't say they're fundamentally lying, but they are fundamentally staying away from the realities of economic management. There's very little government can do right now to control inflation, except certain, acts of responsibility, make sure that that supply chains don't come crashing down again. Just basic governance. It's not really, and there's really not going to be any big changes that either party can do, and especially in divided government, there's nothing that either party can do to.
So if the economy is awash, why not talk about healthcare? I'll bring you back in, Abraham. How is the GOP responding to Latino concerns about healthcare? We saw Bernie win 70% of the Latino vote in Nevada, in part because that was such a key issue for Latino voters there. They're the most underinsured population in the country. What's the GOP's response?
Yeah, so I think that's an incredible question, a great question, because looking at polling, the top three issues, obviously economy is always number one, but healthcare trickles in at 2 or 3 almost every single time. And so I think at this point, if Republicans take back the House and maybe even the Senate, it's pretty much going to be a trial run for what the presidential election looks like in 2024. And if Republicans can put together a good healthcare plan, because as we know that Republicans have been very weak on healthcare up to this point. But look, midterm elections are much less about real-time solutions. We won't get a new House until January. And then even at that, lawmakers won't even actually start making effect into the daily lives of citizens until, even past that. Midterm elections are more so voters expressing their anger towards the current administration, and it's really difficult for Democrats to campaign on a winning message when they have control of the White House, they have control of the House, they have control of the Senate, and yet nothing seems to be benefiting the common working class folk, which primarily makes up that Hispanic and Black community. So I think that this election is much more about the frustrations that we're seeing in our communities, and whatever tonight brings, it's going to be a really good way for both parties to come together and really showcase that they can put something together for the Hispanic and Black communities when it comes to issues like healthcare, education, immigration reform.
Well, right, and also at the local level, we have a number of gubernatorial elections we're watching. Those are, on the state level, Republicans we'll see if they will, lead with policy in places where they win election and re-election. Whereas, yes, at the federal government, we're going to have, no matter what happens tonight, we know we're going to be faced with some really relentless partisan gridlock. I expect coming out of this. Rafael, any final predictions for what we're going to see tonight?
Well, I'll just say the one issue that did sort of change was abortion replaced immigration as a big identity issue among Latinos, and that will probably have a pretty strong effect. Maybe just in districts in California, maybe all over the country, but that will give some Democrats in tight races a little bit of hope. It's a strong secondary issue for them.
Any parting election predictions or thoughts, Abraham?
You know what? I'll leave with this. I think it's so interesting that Democrats are outspending Republicans by Spanish language ads by more than 3 times, but yet Hispanic positive sentiments towards the GOP is at 46%, which is really good for Republicans, and it shows 2 things. One, that the Hispanic vote has always been and will always have this swing dimension to it. So you have to consistently talk to the Hispanic community and showcase what you're doing. But 2, with just a little bit of outreach, with just a little bit of effect, you can have the Hispanic vote swing your way, which is what Republicans are seeing in this election.
Well, Abraham Enriquez, Rafael Bernal, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And our parent company, Nexstar, by the way, will have live election coverage tonight of the 2022 midterms, and News Nation will be broadcasting starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They'll be partnered with Decision Desk HQ to call all of the big races.
They'll also have journalists from across the country, including The Hill, and of course, tomorrow on Rising, we'll be right back here to go over all of the night's election results. You won't want to miss it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.